Top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It appears that former WBO featherweight champion Heather Hardy is going to be returning to action later on next month on the 13th against an opponent that has yet to be announced. She's coming off of 2 consecutive losses to Jessica Camara and Amanda Serrano. It has been over a year's time since that lopsided decision she lost to Jessica Camara in May of last year. Heather hasn't been very active the last 3 years. She only fought once in 2019, skipped out all of 2020, only boxed once in 2021. And it's been a little over a year since she last fought. This will likely be her only fight in all of this year. Likely a rebound fight against a rebound kind of opponent, and likely in the lightweight division where Heather last fought. Lightweight, that's 135 pounds. That's where Katie Taylor reigns as that division's undisputed champion, and that is where Heather Hardy took on Jessica Camara and lost a lopsided decision. Look, I like Heather Hardy, but she really looked her age in that fight. She's not getting any younger. She's 40 now. I just wonder who it is she's going to be fighting and what is she building towards. A title run, perhaps? A shot at Katie Taylor? Maybe that's what she has in mind. I'm really not sure. You know, Heather, back when she was down there at featherweight, before she suffered her first professional loss to Amanda Serrano, even then, she wasn't a big puncher as far as featherweights go. She's not going to be a bigger puncher now, up there at 135 at a higher weight, against naturally bigger girls. What a professional record of 22 wins, 2 losses with no draws, 4 knockouts, having never been stopped. Heather really is a tough lady, a tough cookie. One of the toughest girls around. There's no shame in those 2 losses that she suffered. She's only lost to quality fighters like Amanda Serrano and Jessica Camara. Heather's calling card really is volume punching activity. She's more brawler than boxer. Always has been. And there are a couple of fights out there I can think of, aside from a Taylor fight, which she might be angling for if she is campaigning as a lightweight. Olympic gold medalist Estelle Mosley-Yoka, Yanina Lescano, who very recently took on Estelle, Yanina of Argentina, Mayra Moneo, Anisha Bashil, Firuza Sharapova that took on Katie Taylor not that long ago. I mean, there are any number of girls out there in today's lightweight division to where you can mix and match their names with Heather Hardy's and you're going to get a decent fight, decent scrap. Though, given Heather Hardy's age and her activity level the last couple of years, some of those names are more realistic than others. Some of those are really high-risk fights, if I'm being honest. For Heather, they are. It's a wonder she's getting back out there because I half expected her to retire off that loss to Jessica Camara. That's how one-sided it was. She's going to be fighting later on next month on the 13th. Keep your eyes peeled for that. This month, on the 17th, the woman that beat her, Jessica Camara of Canada, she's going to be returning to action against an opponent that has yet to be announced in what is an 8-rounder. This will be Jessica's second fight this year. She was in action very recently in August against Brazil's own Simone de Silva, veteran journeywoman who she stopped in 2 rounds. In fact, the fight only lasted 2 rounds. It actually behooves Jessica Camara to get back out there and get some more rounds in the bank this year, hopefully to sharpen her up for something bigger next year, sporting a professional record of 9 wins, 3 losses with no draws, 1 knockout, having been stopped at least once. Yeah, she got knocked out by Natalie Brown about 4 years ago. For what it's worth, I think the Jessica Camara that's in front of us here today is a better fighter than the Jessica Camara of 4 years ago. She's 34 years old, certainly not the youngest fighter, but not the oldest either. That fight she had with Simone de Silva was just a pound above the lightweight limit, just a pound above 135 pounds. You get the sense that her very next fight might be fought at or around that same contracted weight. Looks like Jessica Camara means to campaign between lightweight and super lightweight, lest we forget when she fought Kaylee Reese, then champion Kaylee Reese, she was up there at 140 pounds. And Jessica Camara, she didn't look out of place. To some people, she did enough to win that fight. All depends on who you ask. Yeah, Jessica's a good fighter. Good addition to any division. 135, 140, she can hang. Set to make her ring return later on this month on the 17th at the Chase Fieldhouse in Wilmington, Delaware. Part of a D. Lee promotion. Diane Lee Fisher. Jessica is going to be boxing on one of her shows, putting distance between herself and that razor-thin decision loss to Kaylee Rice, then champion. And Jessica Camara is using her time wisely, not waiting too long between fights to get back out there and making the most of the time and the opportunities.
She squeezes in 2 small fights this year. Before this year is out, she can set herself up for something bigger early next year.
There are opportunities for a solid 140-pound or 135-pound fighter out there.
She's just got to keep winning, keep herself in the winner's bracket.
Who knows what the future might hold. For now, Jessica Camara will be returning to action later on this month, and following month, in October, Heather Hardy will be returning to action, both against opponents that have yet to be announced. Keep your eyes peeled for those matchups. In men's heavyweight news, on the heels of his latest loss to Andy Ruiz, Luis Ortiz is eager to step into a fight with Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua in December.
Maybe if he were with some other outfit, he could get back out there on that kind of schedule, but he's a PBC fighter.
He's already fought 2 times this year. It's quite uncommon for a PBC guy to fight 3 times in 1 calendar year. Luis Ortiz himself was quoted as saying, "I have some words of wisdom for some of these boxers who gave their opinion and said I was old because I touched the canvas 2 times because of punches by Ruiz. First of all, this is the heavyweight division, and I'd like to see most of you lighter weights go fight just 1 weight class up. I bet most of you couldn't last 5 rounds, so think before you speak. You should think about the fact that I went all 12 rounds and still wanted more. I did not even sit on my stool in the last round. Give me my respect. All heavyweights have or will get dropped at some point. To say that I'm old because I went down and got up, then what does that say about Fury hitting the canvas? Or Joshua?"
He does raise a valid point.
Tyson Fury's hit the canvas, 6 times? 6 times throughout the course of his career. Anthony Joshua, I believe, 3?
3 or 4 times throughout the course of his. The same applies to Deontay Wilder.
Ortiz continued, "Are they old? I mean, I did stand in front, toe-to-toe with a man who weighed in 25 more pounds than me, and I mostly took the fight to him. And with all respect to Ruiz, I'd love a rematch with him."
I think Luis Ortiz has hit the deck about 8 times now. 8 times throughout the course of his career.
7 or 8 times. 2 times in the first fight with Wilder. 3 in the second.
He hit the deck 2 more times the fight before last with Charles Martin. Charles Martin dropped him twice. That's 5 times.
2 knockdowns in the Charles Martin fight make 5, and 3 more times in the Ruiz fight. Andy Ruiz dropped Luis Ortiz 3 times in his previous bout, in their previous outing. That makes 8 knockdowns. 8 knockdowns total.
5 of which occurred in his last 2 fights.
So while just the act of being knocked down doesn't necessarily herald Father Time catching up, perhaps the frequency of knockdowns in recent bouts does. Luis Ortiz would like to make it known that he is ready, willing, and able to start camp and face either one of them next. Hey Fury and Joshua, I hear you both are looking for opponents. Well, I am down to fight either one of you. Let's see what you young lads can do against me, said Ortiz.
Luis Ortiz said young lads?
I don't know. Listen, level-headed fight fan in me feels that Joshua versus Ortiz isn't a bad idea because they're both coming off of losses in their previous bouts, and they both need to rebound. That's what the level-headed fight fan in me thinks. But the cynical fight fan in me thinks they'd never give Anthony Joshua any credit at all for beating today's version of Luis Ortiz, not coming right off a loss. That's what the cynical fight fan in me thinks. If Anthony Joshua fights him now, what his critics would say is that he waited for Ortiz to get old before fighting him, even though Anthony Joshua already offered that guy a multi-million-dollar price years ago to stand in for Jarrell Miller when Jarrell tested positive for all those performance-enhancing drugs. And Luis Ortiz's own people went on The Boxing Voice and admitted that they fumbled the bag. They fucked it up.
The offer was real, the money was real, and you blew it.
There's no point in fighting him now. For fighting today's faded version of Luis Ortiz, a southpaw, you might as well go in there with Otto Valin, a younger
southpaw than Luis Ortiz, who gave Tyson Fury hell when they fought.
Anthony Joshua, like Luis Ortiz, he wants to get back out there in a jiffy. And I feel like there are more redeeming qualities in an Otto Valin fight than a Luis Ortiz fight. More importantly, whenever Luis Ortiz brings up Anthony Joshua, I can't help but remind myself that it was his own team that fumbled that bag. And I can't help but remind myself that he's a PBC guy. He's not going to go somewhere else to be content for for someone else.
He's just another guy throwing his name around.
Luis Ortiz claims to want a Joshua fight, as does Otto Valine.
Otto, who I just mentioned, Otto, who fought Tyson Fury himself says he wants a Joshua fight.
That entire fiasco, that entire publicity stunt, we know that Shelly Finkel, Deontay Wilder's longtime manager, has been entertaining the possibility of a Joshua fight. You're seeing a proliferation of fighters.
Ortiz wants him, Valine wants him, Fury wants him, Wilder supposedly wants him.
Wilder's manager, I should say, since Deontay Wilder himself, when asked about Eddie Hearn reaching out, he confirmed that Eddie Hearn did in fact reach out to start a dialogue, but his words were, they're busy.
You know, it's not even so much that Luis Ortiz is too old to get back out there before this year is out, but it's the limitations and constraints of the promotional outfit he's with.
That's what would stifle him getting back out there before this year is out more than anything. They're not just going to ship him off and let him go somewhere else, that's one, but they may not have any slots for him in what remains of this year.
That's two.
What does he aspire to make in a fight? What kind of fight is he looking to get into, and what is he looking to get paid for such a fight? You see who he's mentioning. Big names like Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua.
There's not a lot of fights that pay that much for you, my friend.
More realistic possibility would have to be a guy like Ali Demirezin, who just dished out Adam Kovnowski his third professional loss not that long ago. Perhaps Luis Ortiz can rebound with that guy, rebound with a guy like that.
Right there on the PBC side of things, because there's not much chance of him going anywhere else.
Is Luis Ortiz too old to continue to compete at this level? Well, that depends on what remains of Luis Ortiz's career. That depends really on Luis Ortiz and what he shows us. You know what they say, you're only as good as your last fight. And in your last fight, you got dropped 3 times and you lost the decision.
So if that keeps happening, yeah, maybe you are too old.
Just in keeping with the theme of all things heavyweight, fighters coattailing Anthony Joshua, riding his coattails, Frank Warren has explained that they've put Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua talks on hold following the passing of Queen Elizabeth II and will resume in the next week. Tyson and we just don't feel it's appropriate at the moment out of respect for the royal family. Though when Frank Warren says talks, to what talks is he referring to? Tyson Fury's public smear campaign.
The one that Steve Bunce, veteran boxing scribe Steve Bunce, categorized as boring.
Without directly blaming Tyson Fury for what it was he was describing, the whole thing playing out in full view of the public eye.
Well, if you're sick of seeing that, I'm sick of hearing about it, you have no one to blame but Tyson Fury, since he's the one who chose to make all this public.
Along with a 24-hour deadline not but 2 days ago that Frank Warren is now denying.
He is now denying that they set a 24-hour deadline for Anthony Joshua to accept Tyson Fury's offer.
Even though that deadline came directly from Tyson Fury, and we all saw it. Boxing scribes wrote about it. We talked about it here on the channel. Now Frank Warren wants to pretend that none of that was real.
They want it to be this way. They want it to be a circus.
It will be in the UK and hopefully in November. That's what we're looking at, Warren said. How we make it work is that Tyson insists the fight is in the UK. So it's got to work. He wants to fight here and deliver to the British fans.
Hindsight being 2020, the more I think about how all of this is playing out, the more it seems like a baseless publicity stunt.
A veiled attempt to make both Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, look bad. A public pissing contest that...
You do not negotiate a super fight over the course of 3 days, setting 24-hour deadlines along the way.
Moreover, you don't do all this in full view of the public. You could have reached out to these people behind the scenes, behind closed doors, and kept things discreet. You wanted people to see this. You wanted to turn this into a circus because it was your intention to make these guys, make Anthony Joshua, make Eddie Hearn, and Matchroom look bad. This was all about public perception.
I don't even know that this was really about getting him in the ring. It might have been.
Could be a situation to where Fury tells himself, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call him out publicly. And at best, I get the guy in the ring at a very inopportune time for him because he's coming off of 2 losses. He's vulnerable right now. Wounded animal, all that jazz. At best, I get him in the ring, and at worst, I don't. But even if I don't, I can lambast him for it. I can publicly shame him, make him look bad, make his promoter look bad, and their platform
Even if the entire precedence for these quote-unquote negotiations is somewhat unrealistic. You don't make a super fight this way.
Not unless you're deliberately trying to make things difficult, make the fight itself difficult to make. Frank Warren believes that this pay-per-view could shatter previous records. That's what he believes. At the same time, Anthony says he'll take the fight, but he'll take the fight in December 17th.
And Fury doesn't want that. Fury wants it in late November or early December.
Now put your thinking caps on, kids. If your own promoter feels that this pay-per-view, this fight, could shatter previous records, does it really hurt to do it maybe a week or 2 weeks later?
1 or 2 weeks later than you want to, well into December. The story is they're worried about the Usyk fight, and they're trying to space things out with the Usyk fight in mind.
But first of all, can of fucking bullshit, because the Usyk fight ain't made. You ain't even got the site fee situated for that fight to where you're saying, I can't fight December 17th because I've got to fight Usyk early next year. The fight with Usyk early next year isn't even made yet.
So how the fuck is December 17th too late for you to fight this guy when your own promoter thinks it'll break pay-per-view records? If it's that big a fight, make some sacrifices.
Tyson Fury himself, in his own words, which he's never held to, he's never held accountable for anything he says. In his own words, he says the Joshua fight is more valuable than the Usyk fight. He says this is the bigger fight. So if this is the bigger fight...
According to you it is. Why are you letting the Usyk fight get in the way of it? According to you, the Usyk fight isn't even all that important.
Regardless of whether you think it's important or unimportant, you know what it really is. You know what it is. It ain't made yet.
So that's no excuse to demand it either happens in early November or early December. You can fight on the 17th. You just want to keep up this charade.
These shenanigans that certain members of the media will never call Frank Warren out on, or Tyson Fury. It's like the WWE.
It's what I told you. People tune into the WWE knowing that it's scripted, knowing that it's fake, but they play along anyway.
And that's very much what they're doing with this. They're treating these negotiations as if they're serious negotiations, when you know what? Serious negotiations, they don't play out this way. And an earnest effort.
An earnest effort doesn't require you to make all of this public. If you made this public, you did it for a reason, and it was to affect people's perception of things.
Perhaps more so than actually making a fight.
You just wanted to make a spectacle.
Make a scene. Because if you don't get Anthony Joshua in the ring in December, you may end up having to go head-to-head with him that month at the box office.
And there really aren't that many fights left for you out there that actually are box office.
Frank and Tyson have gotten quite comfortable giving everybody the runaround, thinking we're going to forget that 24-hour deadline was set by Tyson himself.
We didn't forget.